Well, I got time for us to start. How's everybody?
Good.
Did you eat enough turkey, ham, dressing, all that stuff? Back to the regular, normal way of eating? Did you get your fill of family? I saw my niece on Thursday and turned right around and ran into her, which I never do. I ran into her on Friday.
Is she okay?
She's great. She's great. Well, she turned 40 on September 1st, and she broke her arm. And I told her, I was kidding with her, I said, getting old's tough, I said, it's just beginning, But no, she's doing great. Doing great. Don't get to see her that often, but it's a blessing to see her 2 days in a row. We've been studying about the divided kingdom, and we talked about Elisha and Elijah and the miracles that Elijah did, and we've been talking some about Elisha. Elijah, he began the destruction of Baal worship in Israel with his contest with the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elisha, he will finish the cleansing of the land of Baal worship with Jehu, the king of Israel. Now, Elisha and Elijah were both prophets of God, but they were I think we've seen they're quite a bit different. Their personalities, the way they work in the kingdom. Elijah, he just kind of appeared on the scene, and then he disappeared. How did he leave? Chariot, fiery chariot, and horses, and then where did Elijah live most of the time? Anybody know? He lived in the hills and the rocks and crevices, and he was kind of hiding out because people were after him all the time. Now, now Elisha, he's a lot different. He moves about the country, he moves about the people, and we see that during his ministry. He lived in the valley, valley where a lot of people would live, and because what do you have in the valleys? Water. And what goes along with water? Food. So therefore, there was more people around where Elisha lived. So we saw how Elijah, he was more stern, he was more harsh, he was to the point. We see with Elisha, he's a little different. He's number one. What did we talk about last week? I think maybe even the week before. When someone would call for some help from Elisha, what would Elisha typically do?
Send one of his servants, one of his assistants.
He would send a servant. Yeah, send one of his assistants. He was more easygoing, I guess, in some ways. Let's turn over to 2 Kings chapter 3. And I'll start reading verse 13. And Elisha said to the king of Israel, "What have I to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother." But the king of Israel said to him, "No, it is the Lord who has called these 3 kings to give them to the hand of Moab." And Elisha said, "As the Lord of hosts lives before whom I stand, were it not that I have regard for Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah? I would neither look at you nor see you, but now bring me a musician. And when the musician played, the hand of the Lord came upon him, and he said, Thus saith the Lord, I will make this dry stream bed full of pools. For thus saith the Lord, you shall not see wind or rain, that the stream bed shall be filled with water, so that you shall drink, you and your livestock and your animals. So, Elisha, he calls for a musician. So just kind of a gentle, different way, I guess, of working. So today we're going to talk more about the miracles performed by Elisha, and we're going to base our study out of 2 Kings chapter 4, and we're going to jump over to chapter 6. If someone would read 2 Kings 4, verses 38 through 44.
And Elisha came again to Gilgal, when there was a famine in the land. And as the sons of the prophets were sitting before him, he said to his servant, Set a large pot, and boil stew for the sons of the prophets. One of them went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered from it his lap full of wild gourds, and came and cut them up into the pot of stew, not knowing what they were. And they poured out some for the men to eat. But while they were eating the stew, they cried out, O man of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat it. He said, Then bring flour. And he threw it into the pot, and said, Pour some out for the men, that they may eat. And there was no harm in the pot. A man came from Baal Shalisha, bringing the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain in his sack. And Elisha said, Give it to the men, that they may eat. But his servant said, How can I set this before 100 men? So he repeated, Give them to the men, that they may eat. For thus says the Lord, They shall eat and have some left. So he set it before them, and they ate and had some left, according to the word of the Lord.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Let's see. So, let's see if we remember or heard what Steve read. So they were out, and one man gathered and put into a pot of food some poisonous what? What was that? Gourds.
Stew was so bad he couldn't eat.
I didn't know gourds could be poisonous, but I guess they can be. So Elisha made the food harmless by doing what to the pot? What did he do? He put some meal, some flour in the pot. Now, I'm not a chemist. I don't know that flour would be the antidote to anything. So I believe the Lord was working in that. We got any chemists in here? Any volunteers? So Elisha fed 100 men with how many loaves of barley and some grain? 20 loaves. So who also fed many people with a small amount of food? That's right. Twice. That's right. All right. So let's go on and let's flip on over to chapter 6. I get my book to move here. And let's see. Someone read verses 1 through 19. We're going to read the chapter, and then we're going to see what we learn from it. Chapter 6.
Now the sons of the prophets said to Elisha, Behold now the place before you, where are we let us go to the Jordan, and each of us take from there a beam, and let us make a place there for ourselves, where we may live. So he said, go. Then one said, please be willing to go with your servants. And he answered, I shall go. So he went with them, and when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried out and said, alas, my master, for it was borrowed. Then the man of God said, where did it fall? And when he showed him the place, he cut off a stick and threw it in there and made the iron float. And he said, take it up for yourself. So he put out his hand and took it. Now the king of Aram was warring against Israel, and he counseled with the servants, saying, in such and such a place shall be my camp. And the man of God sent word to the king of Israel, saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Arameans are coming down there. And the king of Israel sent to the place about which the man of God had told him. Thus he warned him, so that he guarded himself there more than once or twice. Now the heart of the king of Aram was enraged over this thing, and he called his servants and said to them, will you tell me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, no, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. So he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and take him. And it was told him, saying, behold, he is in Dothan. And he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. Now when the attendant of the man of God had risen early and gone out, behold, an army with horses and chariots was circling the city. And his servant said to him, alas, my master, what shall we do? So he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Then Elisha prayed and said, O Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. And when they came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, strike this people with blindness, I pray. So he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. And Elisha said to them, this is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. And he brought them to Samaria.
All right, somebody pick up on verse 20 and read to the end of the chapter.
And they entered the city. Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men so they could see. Then the Lord opened their eyes, and they looked, and there they were inside Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he asked Elisha, shall I kill them, my father? Shall I kill them? Do not kill them, he answered. Would you kill men you have captured with your own sword or bow? Set food and water before them, so that they may eat and drink, and then go back to their master. So he prepared a great feast for them. And after they had finished eating and drinking, he sent them away, and they returned to their master. So the bands from Aram stopped raiding Israel's territory. Sometime later, Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, mobilized his entire army and marched up and laid siege to Samaria. There was a great famine in the city. The siege lasted so long that a donkey's head sold for 80 shekels of silver and a quarter of a cab of seed pods for 5 shekels. And the king of Israel was passing by on the wall. A woman cried to him, help me, my lord the king. The king replied, if the Lord does not help you, where can I get help for you? From the threshing floor, from the winepress. Then he asked her, what's the matter? She answered, the woman said to me, give up your son, so we may eat him. Give up your son, so we may eat him today, and tomorrow we'll eat my son. So we cooked my son and ate him. The next day I said to her, give up your son, so we may eat him, but she had hidden him. When the king heard the woman's words, he tore his robes, and he went along the wall. People looked, and there underneath he had a sackcloth on his body. He said, my God, deal with me, be it ever so severely, if the head of Elisha, son of Shaphat, remains on his shoulders today. Now Elisha was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. The king sent a messenger ahead, and before he arrived, Elisha said to the elders, don't you see how this murderer is sending someone to cut off my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door and hold it shut against him. Is not the sound of his master's footsteps behind him? While he was still talking to him, the messenger came down to him, and the king said, this disaster is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer?
Thank you. All right. So at the beginning, the sons of the prophets wanted to build a new dwelling place where? Where were they wanting to build? Down by the river. It wasn't a white van down by the river. They were wanting to build something down by the Jordan. I've had opportunity to do work on river, do some river projects. And when you're out doing a barge loadout system or something, you may be out, 100 yards or so out in the river, and that water's moving underneath you. And it's amazing. It's always amazing to me how fast overnight that river could come up. And I remember this one particular project. We were working, and one day the river was down quite a bit below us. And the next morning I drive down to the river, and I mean, it's just right there. It's almost up to the bank. We were putting in a pit. They're not too far from the river, from the bank of the river, and we were having to pump water out of that. They were going to load grain off onto a barge and fertilizer and different things. But when you're out there on that river and that water's moving, and it's moving underneath you, and you may be only 15 or 20 feet above the water in that current, you get a sense of vertigo. At least I did several different times. You're looking through a grate, so you can see the water moving beneath your feet, and it can be an experience. We we're very careful of our tools. Tools are pretty valuable, and without your tools, you're kind of worthless. As trying to install something. So. We had things tied off and things when we were out over the water that we wouldn't drop anything into the water. But they were building this place, and they were cutting logs or beams, timbers, and one man's axe head, which was borrowed, accidentally fell into the water. What did Elisha do?
He threw a stick in. It made the iron float.
Made the iron float. Somebody has the American Standard Version. I think it's American Standard. Read what it said there. 5 through 7. The New American Standard. I believe it was the American Standard said that. I think American Standard. 5 through 7. I think it would be in 7 or 6. Excuse me.
But as one has falling a beam, an axe head fell into the water, and he cried and said, "Alas, my master, for it was borrowed." And the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" And he showed him the place, and he cut down a stick and cast it into the thicker, and
Thither.
Okay. Into the thither, and made the iron swim.
Swim. Made it swim.
Threw it over there.
Yeah, just there.
Hither and yon.
That's that old English,
That's American Standard.
But he made it to float, made iron to float, or made iron to swim. I like that that translation about swim, because it just, to me, gives a little different visual than it just floating to the top. I see something floating to top like a fish you caught on a hot day that just tired of fighting, you know, and it just kind of bloop. But this iron is swimming, you know. I can helps me to visualize, I guess, the.
You can almost see it doing the backstroke over the shore.
That's right. That's right. You know, it just gives a little bit more dynamic about that, you know, a visual about what actually occurred. Because I tell you what, if I had dropped an axe head or a wrench or something in the river and somebody made that come up out of the water, now that would get your attention.
Kind of reminds me of, I participate in the golf classics here, the golf outings that we have here at church. And I'm not a golfer, and I had borrowed some very expensive clubs from my neighbor. And it was raining that day, and the hand was wet, and it flew into the pond. I went after that thing.
Yeah.
And it did float, and it did swim. So I had to go after it. Didn't have to go too far, but.
Well, that brings me to another point. You know, now I take care of my tools, and I'm really cautious about who I loan them out to. But if I borrow somebody's tools, I am way more careful. I'm more finicky about it than if it's my own. If I break my own, it's mine. If I lose my own, well, it's my loss. But I don't want to lose your tools.
You have an old axe or a hammer. If you periodically, you've got to go in there and wedge some more stuff in it, or it gets loose. And the thing I saw here is the other guy's going like, "I'm glad I wasn't next to him. That thing could have flown off and hit me."
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lack of care in inspecting the tool to make sure the head was firmly attached.
That's true. Good point. You know, I Thanksgiving Day, we went to my brother's, and my brother and my nephew and my niece was there. But my nephew especially, he's really he's more into tools than I am, and he makes all kind of things. And his newest little thing is he actually built a 3D printer. I mean, you could go buy one, but Scott made one. And he makes all kinds of stuff. But he's real interested in our history, in our family history. And so here, a couple of weeks ago, I was going through some stuff, and I found one of the pocket knives my grandfather gave me. I was either 8 or 9 years old. And I remember over behind the stove, there was this little desk and this drawer, and it had a bunch of pocket knives in it. And I'd stayed 2 or 3 days with them. And I was younger. And he pulled out the drawer, and there was a bunch of pocket knives. He said, "Pick one out." So I picked this particular one. I wished I'd brought it today. I was carrying it last Sunday, actually. But I picked this particular one out, and he says, "No, not that one." And because it was a big one, it's 4 inches unopened. And so he said, "No, pick another one." So I got another one. And then a year or two later, I had been there, and he had given me, he didn't take me to the drawer. He just says, "Here, son." And he gave me this knife. I was, like I say, 8 or 9 years old. So for over 50 years, I've had that knife. Now, how many of y'all have had a pocket knife for more than 50 years?
Same one.
Same one, same knife.
Always managed to lose mine.
I've lost many. So as a kid, I used to lose knives all the time. And so guess what I don't do with that knife? I don't carry it. I sharpened it when I was about 18 years old, and that was the last time it saw a stone, and it's still sharp today. I've probably carried that knife maybe 25 or 30 times in those 50 plus years, because it's sentimental. It's got some value to me. If you needed a pocket knife, I would not let you borrow that knife, because I've lost many knives that way. But Monty makes a good point that that tool had not been taken care of.
It reminds me of a passage from Ecclesiastes. It says, "He who digs a pit may fall into it, and a serpent may bite him who breaks through the wall. He who quarries stones may be hurt by them. He who splits logs may be endangered by them. If the axe is dull, and he does not sharpen its edge, and he must exert more strength." The tools we work with are dangerous and need to be properly maintained. And it ends up by saying wisdom has the advantage of giving success. So whatever we're working with, whatever tool it is, could be an automobile. Wisdom says, take care of it. Could be a power saw. Wisdom says, take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a coffee pot. Wisdom says, take care of it. So we have to be careful with it. God is telling us to be careful with the tools that we use, because they can harm us and harm others as well if we're not careful.
That's true.
One good thing that happened, you have a son, you blame with losing that wrench on him. Where is that wrench, boy? I don't know. You left it on that car.
Yeah.
The last 20 years he's been married, I haven't been blaming anything on him.
Well, I had bought this pair of, they're 24-foot, real heavy gauge jumper cables. And they're black and white. They're really, really a high quality pair. And I was looking for them, and I asked Robbie, I said, "You seen my big jumper cables?" "No, Dad, no, Dad." And then here a few years ago, they moved from one house to another, and I was out there helping them. I said, "There they are." I just grabbed them, put them in my truck. I've heard it said that the difference between, a world power and a third world country is the sophistication of their tools. And so taking care of your tools and having good tools, you can do a lot of good things with good tools, but you got to take care of them.
This passage I often use in talking about logic. Logical conclusions always start with an assumption. Now, the assumption is iron will not float. And the more general statement is the laws of nature are constant in time and space. A lot of our scientific thought today has this as an underlying premise to it. Now, talk about engineering stuff like that, talk about things that try to project things from the past into the future. They assume the laws of nature are constant time and space. When you make that assumption, you've automatically assumed that the Bible is false. And any conclusion you reach that the Bible is false based from that is illogical, because it's the assumption you started with.
Mm-hmm.
People who want to go back and project what happened from the beginning of time till now through evolution or cosmology, whatever it may be, they're using the assumption that everything has always worked the same way, all times, all places. When they make that assumption, they've already discounted the Bible. And this is the clearest example of that, a violation of the laws of nature in a miraculous sense.
Yeah. Good point. All right. So you read, Buddy, Elisha and the king, who was warring the Arameans. And then my version said the king of Syria. So I guess they're one and the same. So the king of Syria, or the Arameans, was warring against the king of Israel. And so I thought this is kind of funny. Every time the king of Syria counseled with the servants regarding the location of what?
Where he's gonna build his camp.
Where his camps, where his camp would be. And Elisha warned the king of who? Of Israel, to avoid these places, these camps, as he was watchful, saving himself not just once or twice, but many times. So it's like, how do they know? You know, I'm sure he's got questions. It's like, man, how are they finding? How do they know? You know, they're not coming around. We come in close proximity to where they should be, and they just don't show up. You know, I'm sure that the king was having a lot of questions. So the king of Syria was greatly blank and believed one of his servants was a what? He was greatly troubled. I would be.
One version says enraged. Yeah, enraged, mad.
Enraged, mad, troubled.
Got a spy in the camp.
Got a spy. Who would that be? And so his servants told him that Elisha, the prophet of Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that he, the king of Syria, speaks in his bedroom.
You know, last week we talked about Naaman being one of the commanders of the army of Syria. And I wonder how he felt about all this, if he was still a commander of the army at this time, if he knew what was going on, and he knew that it was Elisha, because it just says there one of the king's servants told him that.
Yeah.
Wonder if Naaman figured in this story in any way, and we're just not told about it here.
And we're not told, but that's we could speculate that possibly so. You know, you could also, I'm sure word has gotten around, you know, the camp, especially the military, what has been done for Naaman, but it's always, have you seen this, noticed this? It seems like it's always a servant that tells the king. You know, it's always some servant that's telling the king this, telling him this, telling him that. You know, so the servant told Naaman, hey, you go listen to this guy, you know. You know, he wasn't about to go dip in the Jordan, you know. He had better rivers, right? So the king of Syria told his men to find Elisha, and was told that Elisha was where?
Alabama.
He was in Lower Alabama. Now, that's 11,728 miles away from the Dothan we're talking about. I looked it up. So it's that Dothan right there. So I couldn't find a good map that would show some things, but I did want to show where Dothan was. Also, we got a bonus question. And what story do we first hear of Dothan in the Bible?
I'll cut Google search that.
Oh, that's cheating.
That's right.
I'll help you out. Genesis 37. Anybody want to turn there?
That's where the brothers were.
That's where the brothers of who? Joseph. That's right. That's where, so they had been, go back. They had been up kind of toward Jezreel, and then they went down to Dothan. And then I also was using Google, and I found out, so what is the significance of Dothan in the Bible? So Dothan was a city in central Israel, approximately 12 miles north of Samaria. So catch that, 12 miles north. That's why I was really trying to look up, was how far it was from Samaria, the city of Samaria. In the hills of Gilboa. Today it's known as Tel Dothan, located on the south plains of Jezreel. The word Dothan means two wells, and both wells are still in existence. You know, I thought that's pretty cool. And then, as we read, it was first mentioned in the Bible in a place where Joseph was mistreated by his brothers, where he was sold to the Ishmaelite traders. And so that happened there. So, continuing on. We're going to run out of time. So Elisha Elisha and the king of Syria, the king of Syria sent what and a great what, who encompassed the city at night.
Basically, sent the army, horses, chariots.
Horses, chariots, that's right, and the army. So, when Elisha's servant saw the army in the morning surrounding the city, he was alarmed. I would be too. But Elisha told him not to blink, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. No fear. Don't be afraid. Don't worry. Be happy. So, when Elisha prayed, the Lord opened the eyes of his servant, and he saw the mountains full of blank and blank all around Elisha.
Horses and chariots of fire.
Horses and chariots of fire. That's that would be something to see.
Pretty comforting.
It is comforting. It's very comforting.
Makes that not very easy when you can see that.
So I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. Nothing I really planned to say, but kind of makes me think about, you know, it's that season where we see it's a wonderful life, you know, and so he's got this angel, this guardian angel. Do you suppose that there are angels, there are entities, there are horses and chariots of fire surrounding us today, and we just don't see them? Could it be? I don't know.
I would say the horses and chariots of fire were there to counteract the horses and chariots of the king of Arameans. So whatever is troubling us, the angels that surround us are a better version of what is fighting against us.
Good point.
So God knows what we need. He knows what's troubling us, and whatever we need is there. And we just can't see it sometimes. Most of the time we can't see it.
Most of the time we can't see it. Sometimes we get the opportunity to see, and most of us have probably lived long enough that we can recall some situation in our life, and we were wondering how could this ever be good? What's the good that comes out of this? And it can be really bad situations. And then some years later, you've observed and you've seen how God worked in the lives of people, and you saw how God used that as something for the good. And so that just something I was thinking. When the army came to the city to seize Elisha, he prayed that the Lord would smite them with what? With blindness. Elisha led the blinded men to where? To Samaria. 12 miles away. Buddy was paying attention. So I didn't figure it would be a very long distance, because you wouldn't want to lead all these soldiers, this army of blind people, from here to California or something. So it's just 12 miles. 12 miles is a good ways. And we know it's rugged, it's on the hillside, so the king of Israel asked Elisha if he should do what to them? If he should kill them. Elisha asked the king, he asked him kind of more of a sarcastic way, would you smite those that he had taken captive with blank and blank? Sword and bow. And Elisha told the king to feed the captives and then send them away to where? To their home, to their master. So, we're just basically out of time. I think the first bell is already rung. So anyway, these are some interesting stories, and we can see how the Lord was working through Elisha, having this host of horses and chariots of fire to surround him. And I wonder if that's what they, when you hear somebody offer a prayer and say, ask for a hedge of protection, I wonder if that's that hedge of protection. Anyway, let's see. Get Steve to close us out in a word of prayer.
Dear God, thank you for blessing us. Thank you for our time together and our chance to study your word and to see about all the great things that you did back in the old times, in the Bible times. We can see your power. We can see, as one of the verses says, that it was a light thing in your sight to be able to do those things. And we are amazed by that. And we ask that you would take care of us and protect us in whatever way that we need, from whatever it is that we need protecting from as we are living in today's world. Help us to be able to stand strong and to not be afraid, and to know that you are God, that you are protecting us, and that nothing bad can happen to us in your eyes. We know that there is death and there is trouble, that you are protecting us and that you have a home in heaven prepared for us. And we thank you for that. We thank you for Jesus and for his sacrifice on the cross so that we can have that forgiveness of sins and can have that home in heaven with you. Please be with us now as we go to worship you, and as we offer up our praise to you, and as we remember that sacrifice that you made for us. Help us to do all that in a way that is acceptable to you and glorifies you, and also builds us up as your church.